Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. This is episode 254 for all those keeping track. And this is going to be a great episode because, I've talked about rejection marketing many, many times, but my next guest is a master at client attraction marketing. So I want to welcome the magnificent, the magical Dave Dee. So thanks for being here.
Hey man, hey Rob, thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate it. Magnificent. I like that. I like that. No one's ever said that before, but that's great, and we're absolutely on the same page with the rejection marketing.
I mean,
I even
I can take magnificent back.
No, well, we'll let the listeners decide after, right? Whether you should take the magnificent back or not. So I'm totally setting myself up here for some comments. So
Yeah,
yeah, but no, we're going to deliver some great value.
I've been following you for eons. Just for my affiliation and your affiliation with GKIC, which for the listeners, it's Glazer Kennedy Inner Circle, was founded by Dan Kennedy and Bill Glazer, two of the probably most brilliant marketers on the planet when it comes to, getting or teaching marketers how to do what we do. But you've been through actually you worked closely with him and you saw the thick and thin and dealt with the bullshit but you've come out, I think, stronger than ever. People
Yeah,
gravitate to
yeah,
you.
I have. It was an interesting experience. So just to give people a little background so they understand. So as you mentioned, GKIC, well, Dan Kennedy founded the original company, sold it to Bill Glazer. They combined it for GKIC, which is interesting because it was GKIC Inner Circle, and GKIC, the acronym was Glazer Kennedy Inner Circle. So as you know, it was really Glazer Kennedy Inner Circle, Inner Circle. So not the best name, not the best title, but and then Bill actually sold the company. Bill actually sold the company um, to a private equity company, which was outside of the entrepreneurial space. So
Mhm.
this was corporate coming in. Bill actually didn't, he was supposed to stay on for a while, but he couldn't, he was really no longer in charge and they really didn't have to listen to him. They paid him a bunch of money. And so he left. And so there was a huge gap there. And Kennedy said, you better get somebody in here who knows what the hell they're doing when it comes to marketing.
Mhm.
And he recommended me.
Mhm.
And so I became their chief marketing officer. It was the first time I ever worked in corporate in my life. They literally made me one of those offers you can't refuse. In fact, I made the offer. The I actually set up the um, uh, terms, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to take this. There's
Mhm.
no way, and they did. They took it. And then I was in corporate hell for 4 years, and it was just such a difference between the entrepreneurial mindset and the corporate mindset. And so yeah, but the truth is I got to work closely, very very closely with Dan.
Mhm.
My job was really uh, it was just chief marketing officer and title only because my job was really selling stuff. So I took over for Bill.
Mhm.
So I created a bunch of their best-selling products, either through my efforts on video or by interviewing Dan. So we
Right.
did a lot of things like that, and I was the most prolific platform salesperson. In fact, the only platform salesperson at the company. And so that's just a little background to get people headed in the right direction.
That let's backtrack because you mentioned the word terms. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when it comes to terms, they allow the other person to dictate what they're going to do. And I've always been this big term and conditions. Look, you're the entrepreneur. It's your game. If they want to play by your rules, you got to tell them what it is. And so you did. And yeah, you realized going into it, or maybe you didn't, but you found out
Then,
that it was a
yeah.
giant shit pile that you had to dig yourself out of. But was on your terms. And
Yeah, it was on my terms, and they but as you mentioned, the word shit pile was really the thing. I want to make sure we give people value here, and but I think it's really important that especially someone who is an entrepreneur who's listening to this doesn't fall into the corporate mindset ever, because it was absolutely brutal there. And so there were so many things that they did the complete opposite. So I remember going to the first board meeting, and at this board meeting, they didn't even talk about marketing.
wow.
I was sitting at I'd never been in a board meeting in my life, right? To show you how lame I was as far as corporate world, they took me aside and they said, all right, so this is not a joke either, by the way, Rob. They said to me, we want to make you a C-level executive, right? And you know what I said to them? C-level? I want to be A-level. I kid you not. I literally said that. And these corporate people, like, they thought I was joking, and then they realized I wasn't. And I think at that point they might have wondered, "Holy crap! Did we bring in the wrong guy here?" But there was we just had a completely different philosophy. I came from a direct response marketing background,
Mm-hmm.
talking about client attraction and getting leads that way and all of that. And they had a completely different approach, which was diametrically opposed to the teaching
Mm-hmm.
of the foundational teaching. And so I would go out and do these seminars and do these boot camps, and people are smart. They would say, well, you're teaching this, but the company's not doing this. So it was a difficult situation
I
there.
actually I watched one of your Sell from the Stage presentations
Yeah.
in a GKIC event in Colorado 2019, and I was impressed. I mean, people were just gravitating to you. You could be selling them frozen crapsicles, and they would buy them. You just had them, mesmerized.
Yeah, that's my major skill set. I'm not great at a lot of things, but creating persuasive presentations, I'm really not. I mean, it's a very narrow area where I'm really good, and that's the area, right? So either selling on a webinar, selling one to many, as it's called. Yeah, and so but the same principles apply to that. I'll give you a funny story. This will be the last corporate story, because we could go on with corporate stories, corporate nightmare stories forever. But I sold at one of the GKIC events $540,000 in 40 minutes from the stage. Okay, so that's pretty good, right? And it was so I constructed the presentation really very, very quickly, because they needed a revenue boost. And so I said, okay, we'll create this thing and we'll sell it. So I sold 540,000. And so they like to do surveys. They love surveys. So they surveyed the audience, and there were a handful of people who thought I sold too hard from the stage. And I typically don't. I mean, when I go out and speak at other people's events, I'm typically one of the highest rated speakers and almost always the highest salesperson, almost
Mm-hmm.
always, right? And so I'm like, so what? And they were so focused on the maybe 3 to 5 people out of an audience of 500 on the complaints. I'm like, we just did $540,000 in sales, right? And who cares what the survey says? So again, just different mindset.
Yeah.
And so I think having the right mindset is important. But going to one-to-many selling, it's the same thing that you teach, right? So if we start with the title of the presentation, which is one of the most important pieces of the presentation, especially if you're marketing it online. So let's say you're doing Facebook advertising, you're driving people to a webinar. Well, most people are looking to attract the most leads that they can. Well, that's the number, right? And obviously the agencies like that. Look at how many leads we got you. Look how many people signed up for this thing. That doesn't matter, right? So your title and your topic should not only it should appeal to the people who your best prospects, right? So it should attract those best prospects, but at the same time, it should repel those prospects. So I work with a lot of financial advisors, and one of the biggest problems that they have is getting people at their seminars or at their webinars. Really, you're doing the same presentation, whether it's a seminar or a webinar, and they get what they call inside the industry plate lickers, right? So people coming for the steak dinner at the Ruth's Chris Steakhouse with no intention to buy.
Right.
And so they're attracting, yes, they may be filling the room, but they're not filling the room with the right people.
Yeah.
So the philosophy that you have and that you teach so brilliantly is no, attract less people, but attract the right people. Because first of all, it makes your business more streamlined, it makes it more profitable, and it makes your life a lot better.
Yeah.
Because you're not having to deal with people who simply aren't right for you. Right? They're just not, they're not a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And so that's what any marketing or sales presentation really should do. So you say I could sell to anybody, and I can, but I don't want to sell to anybody, right? I want to sell to people who, unless it's my only step in my process. So, right, if I only have one thing that I'm selling from the stage, and that's my entire business, well, then I need to sell it to as many people as I can, because that's my business. And hopefully no one has that scenario. So now when I sell from the stage or from the webinar, yeah, I'm selling something, but it's designed to that's not the end game. Everyone thinks that first sale is the end game. That's not the end game. That's the beginning. Right. That's the beginning of the process. Because now I've got somebody who has invested is going to invest some time, has invested some capital into what I have. Right. And so now I can go on and sell them the thing that I really want to sell them. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to create a presentation that brings in prospects, that brings in even buyers that are not going to be right for the main thing or the main things that I want to sell later on down the road.
Right.
And who I can help. Right. So yeah, I can create a presentation that, and there's a lot of people that do it. There's a lot of people that do it. And we've all seen them, right? They're typically the guy that gets on the chair in the back of the room at the end, or comes out and, hey, raise your hand if you want to make more money. You know, that guy. Yeah. Right. First of all, we don't want to be that guy. And second of all, that guy doesn't care. Right. He just wants to make as many sales as he possibly can, whether to the right people or not to the right people.
Yeah. One of my clients, we were getting them tons and tons and tons of leads. They just didn't have the personnel to follow up on the leads. So their leads kept piling up. People were complaining, hey, you're never calling us back. What's going on? You're not sending us stuff. And it's like, okay, let's dial this back so that you can at least control this. Right. And we're getting them less leads, and they still weren't following up. I'm like, okay, you guys are hopeless. I can't help
well, I got to say that the agency business, I don't know how people do the agency business. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But yeah, and so what people need to look at in that scenario is, because then what happens is they'll come back and they'll say to you, well, your stuff isn't working.
Right.
Right. And the truth is that it's not your stuff that isn't working. It's that their stuff isn't working. And so that happens a lot, by the way, in business. So people are generating leads, and they've got somebody answering the phone, and the job of the agency, or the lead generation, let's not even say agency, the job of any lead generation marketing is to attract the right people, dissuade the people who we don't want. But that's the job of it, right? Whether that's a job to get somebody to opt in for a webinar, well, then it's the webinar's job to convert them. Okay. if you're doing something else, you're doing radio or something, the job of the lead generation is to get the right person to make the phone call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then that person who's taking the phone call, so you got to be really careful about, and a lot of people do this, well, this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
When it actually is working. Just to give you an example, one of my I've got a mastermind program called Elite, so my Elite Mastermind program. Very successful attorney is in this program, and she did a test of a radio ad over 4th of July, and we told her it's going to be a nightmare, but it was really, really inexpensive. So the flight that she got, which is what it's called in radio, the flight that she got was cheap. So she did it. And so she comes back and she reports, I'm never doing it again. I'm never going to do this radio station again. And we said, oh, well, it was 4th of July weekend, not really the best time. We said, what happened? She says, well, I only got 12 calls. Okay. And all right. And only 11 of them were qualified. And they all came in for their consultation because she's sold by consultation. And I closed 4 of them. And it's going to be around, I don't know how these numbers right, but you get the idea. I made about $35,000. So everyone in the group was like, what?
Yeah.
Run those ads again. So you spent this little amount of money, but she was focused on exactly the opposite of what you teach. She was focused on the quantity. I only got 12 phone calls. Right? As opposed, so in her mind, she would have rather had a bazillion phone calls. Well, she thinks this, but she wouldn't, right? And do all of these meetings with unqualified people who weren't going to buy in the first place, right? As opposed to meeting with 11 people or 10 people or how many people she met with, closing 4 of them. And then the real number is the bottom line number, the 35,000. So if you invest 2 and that turns into 35, that's pretty good. I said to her, Martha, where are you going to put the 2 to get the 35 over a weekend, right? So focusing on the right metrics and focusing on each piece of the puzzle. And that's the other thing that people make a mistake with, Rob, as you know, is they try to get their lead generation marketing to do too much.
Yeah.
Right. They try to, so the info marketer, for example, the person that's an expert in selling online courses, is in their ad is trying to not only generate a lead, but almost sell the course in the ad, as opposed to attracting the right person who would be interested and then letting the process sell the course. It's a huge mistake. If you think about it this way, every piece of your marketing campaign, I call it your sales process, because marketing is only one piece of the entire sales process. Is really should be accomplishing one thing. So most emails that you send out should be designed to get somebody to click a link, right? As opposed to close the entire deal. So people try to get their marketing to do more than their marketing is supposed to do, and then it becomes really muddled. So if you think about it, okay, what is this first client attraction piece or lead generation piece supposed to do here, right? Who do I want to attract? Who don't I want to attract? What do I want them to do, right? And everything should be focused around that. Also, it's the same thing when you're constructing a one-to-many sales presentation. So you always, as the late, great Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. So every piece of your presentation is designed for one purpose only, is to create the desire in the audience to buy whatever it is you're selling. Whether you're selling a product, service, idea, philosophy, it doesn't make any difference. But each piece of that presentation leads to that. What
Mhm.
most people do when they're creating a one-to-many presentation or any marketing piece, but let's just talk about one-to-many because that's where I'm really good, is they will teach, give value, right? Which is the thing, give a lot of value, deliver your best stuff, move the free line. We've all heard this stuff,
Mhm.
right? And then tack on a close at the end.
Mhm.
I shouldn't say close because it's not even a close. Tack
Right.
on, hey, buy my stuff
Yeah.
at
Some
the
type of
end.
call to action.
Some type of call to action, which isn't even right. It's not even a thing, which is
Right.
the complete opposite of how you construct a presentation that actually persuades,
Right.
influences, motivates somebody to take action.
Mhm.
So you've got the different pieces of the presentation all designed. Everything you say, everything you do. The truth is your entire presentation is a close. Everything's a close, right? There's a actual closing sequence where you have your call to action, but everything else leads to that.
Yeah.
And
And
people don't understand.
well,
They
it's
deliver all this great content. Yeah.
right, and it's all designed as a psychological human element. And you mentioned the word muddled, and I think AI, the artificial intelligence that's coming out, has completely muddled everybody's funnels, everybody's marketing, and they're like, oh, let's just have the machine do it, and we can back off. We don't even have to have a phone number on our website anymore. It'll just be through forms and funnels, and then people are like, what the hell is this crap? And you get through
Yeah,
some,
that's
and it completely you botch it all up.
Yeah, it gets muddled. It gets muddled. It gets confusing. The prospect. I think AI has its place, and I think it's going to become obviously not. I think I know it's going to become more and more sophisticated and get better and better and better. But the one thing that it can't do is add in, at least right now, that human
Hmm.
touch,
Right.
right? So AI right now, and I can't see enough for one of the best ways to sell, right? One of the absolute best ways, and I'm biased about this, but it's the truth, is getting up in front of a group of people,
Right. Well,
right,
let's
and
let's
presenting
talk
your,
about that because
yeah,
you didn't always just get up on stage. I mean, it had to be a progression. And I know the first time I spoke, it was brilliant. Then I was invited out to Vegas and I spoke, and I'm like, and I froze. Good thing, good thing I had my
yeah,
cheat sheet in my pocket, and I'm like,
yeah,
but it was. You never know when you're going to freeze up. You could give 100 speeches, and there something in the audience is going to trigger you, and you're going to freeze. Happens. But
yeah.
you know, you did. I think you did magic before you became a
Yeah.
persuasive seller on stage. So maybe that helped.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it did. So I was my lifelong dream ever since I was 8 or 9 years old was to be a professional magician, and I mean, it was not a passing thing. It's what I want to do. And my parents thought it was kind of cute when I was 8, right? But when I was 18, no longer so cute. Um, and like in any profession, we're taught that if you just get really good at what you do, so if I just become a really good magician, if I just become a really good entertainer, I'll be successful. The lawyer's taught, if you just become the best lawyer that you can be, you'll be successful.
Mm.
Chiropractor is taught, you just adjust better than anybody, you're going to be sick. And that's so far from the truth. It's
Right.
not scary. It's scary, and it's very difficult to convince people otherwise.
Hmm.
But one of the things that changed my life was something that Kennedy actually said, and this one sentence changed my life. He said, "It's more important to be a master marketer than it is a master of your craft."
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be a master of your craft. I'm not implying that. He wasn't implying that. But what he's saying is, if you don't have the focus on the marketing, it doesn't matter how good you are,
Yeah.
right? If you're not attracting the right people, if you're not getting clients, it doesn't matter how good you are. Being great is not an advantage until they become your client.
Hmm.
And so that really had me focus on marketing, right? And stop practicing, and never going out and really doing anything. And so I went from doing Once I really dove headfirst into marketing and took massive action, as Jim Rohn talks about, massive action. I mean, I took massive action. I went from doing 3 shows a month to 25 shows a month in 90 days.
Wow.
In my 4th month, I did 57 shows. Yeah.
Mm.
And then what happened was people started inviting me to speak on entrepreneurial stages to tell my story, right? Because I was using marketing, because marketing is marketing is marketing. Selling is selling is selling. I was selling a service just like everybody else. My service just happened to be different, but it was still a service. I still needed to generate leads, close sales, deliver the service, get referrals. It's the exact same business, right? It was show business, but it's still business.
Yeah.
And so I started getting invited to speak on stages to tell my story. And Kennedy obviously wanted me to speak on his stage. This is before I became the chief marketing officer, like years before, on his stage, because to tell the story. And I remember him inviting me, Rob, to speak on stage on one of the main stages at one of the annual events called the Super Conference. And he said, but there's one thing, you've got to sell a product at the end. And I said to myself, no problem, right? This is going to be easy. I'm on stages every day, every night. I'm on stages performing. So I put together a product, an info product, which I really didn't know how to do. And I get up there and I'm cocky, right? I'm killing it up there. I'm killing it. Audience is clapping. They're laughing. I'm entertaining the hell out of them, right? I'm teaching them good stuff. And then I do my close and I'm expecting this stampede to the back of the room, right? Because I've seen it. I've seen other speakers like have a stampede to the back of the room. I'm thinking riches. I'm thinking new car, new house, all of that. And I'm not kidding you. There was a trickle to the back of the room. And most of those people were going to the back of the room to leave to go to the bathroom. It was an unmitigated disaster. And it's then I realized there's a whole difference between speaking to motivate or speaking to entertain and speaking to sell, right? Big difference. And I'm going to piss off some people here who are motivational speakers or educational speakers. I can teach almost anybody to get a standing ovation, right? To me, getting up there and motivating and that kind of stuff, well, good and necessary, and there are people that are better at, nowhere near the skill set of getting up there and getting people to take out their credit card. Yeah. It's a different skill set. And so then I did the same thing I did to move my entertainer career forward. I dove head first. I invested in myself. I got mentoring. I, bought stuff, hired people that I really couldn't afford at the time. And I put together my own system. Fast forward 2.5 years later, Glazer now owns the company. This is tying this all together, so it was a really good question. Glazer says, "Hey, I want you to sell this license for me, right at the event." And now again, I had it on the stage again because once you go on main stage and you bomb, because just a little inside baseball for everybody, you get 50% of your sales and the promoter gets 50% of your sales, right? So they're counting on your slot to produce money at the event. That's how it works. So when you go up there and you don't produce any sales, they're not really, doesn't matter how much the audience, they don't give a shit about the survey. Oh, we love Dave, right? Yeah. They don't care about that, right? They care about the number.
Yeah, they want the money.
And so now Glazer says, hey, we want you to sell this license to some of Kennedy's products. You put together the pitch, right? We'll split revenue. And I said, great. But Dan said, well, we're not going to put this guy back on main stage again, right? Because, and so they put me in a breakout session first thing in the morning in the bowels of the hotel. But this time I'm armed with my system for selling, right? So I'm very, very confident. I had tested it on different audiences. Things were going really well. But this was my first big grand slam out of the park home run. So I sold $350,000, actually $340,000 in 75 minutes. And now again, I didn't get to keep all of that. I only got to keep half, but I don't know what everyone else's hourly rate is. I was pleased. I was pleased with that. And what was interesting is to tie all this together, Bill Glazer had left the company, as I told you about. So he was no longer even with the company. The new private equity company had taken over. Bill had been gone. Bill left.
Mm-hmm.
And so the CEO was like, I was the number one salesperson by far at the entire event in a breakout session. And so she was like, who the hell is this guy? And so that's how the whole story ties together. Yeah, but the major takeaway for everybody is because we want to make sure that I want to make sure that they're getting some really good takeaways here. Number one is invest in yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Invest in what matters. Number two is take massive action for sure. Okay. And the number three is if you master the skill of speaking to sell, whether that's online, whether it's in person, that's one of those valuable skills that you can have for many reasons, Rob, because when you get up in front of a group of people, you automatically have some authority, some celebrity, and some expertise. It's kind of bestowed upon you.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about AI, and when you make that personal connection with your audience, AI can't do that.
No, and
AI can't do that.
AI has no personality. You have personality. I have personality. Everybody who's listening to this has some type of personality. I'm very sarcastic. Dave is wild when he gets up on stage. I mean, he just the amount of energy you have is contagious. I mean, I saw people that they're staring at you. They're clapping. You know, and
yeah, I mean,
that's a craft.
by the way, it's a skill that anyone can. It's really a skill that anyone can learn.
Right.
So, how much time do we have here? I want to make sure
We can keep on going. I have
okay, so here's what I want to do because here's what I want to. Yeah, we could go for days and days, but here's what I want to do for the people that are hanging on here. If it's all right with you, I want to give some over the top value to folks by giving them the structure of a one-to-many, how to structure a one-to-many sales presentation. We can do it in about 15 minutes. Now, obviously, there's going to be more to it that they need, but this will absolutely get them started on the right path. Okay.
Right. And after this, I want you to share your website so people can find you.
Yeah. And we've got a free resource which will actually dive deeper into exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay. Awesome. But let's talk about how you structure this one. So if you guys haven't been taking any notes, get a notepad. I'm telling you, the next 15 minutes are going to be super valuable. So that the rest hasn't been valuable, but this is going to be over the top valuable. So the first thing that you need to do is there's four major parts to your presentation. The first part is your opening. Okay, I'm going to tell you what needs to go in your opening. The second part is the content section. Notice I didn't say teaching section. I said content section. Then you have the transition to the close, and then you've got your close. Okay, so those are the four major pieces to creating a presentation that sells. And again, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling a service, or whether you're just selling somebody on a belief system or a philosophy, it's the same thing. Okay, so your opening, here's what it needs to accomplish. The first 30 seconds, you need to come out and let the audience, number one, know that they're in the right place. This is for you if. What you're about to hear is for you if. And then you describe the problems that your audience is facing. Okay, I'm going to go through this really quickly. The next thing that you do is you let them know that in the next 50 minutes, 75 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever it is, they're going to discover these things. You're going to discover this, 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 and this. These are the three major things that your audience would want to know. Okay, so the first thing, who this is for. The second thing is, here's what you're going to learn. All right. The next thing is, this is all your opening. You're going to future pace. You're going to paint two scenarios, though. The first scenario is a bright future where if they do what you tell them to do, right, if they follow what you're about to tell them, this could be their future. And that is a future that they want. So it's really important that you understand who your audience is and what their desires are and what their vision for the future is. So that's what you paint, provided that you can provide that. I mean, obviously, right, we're not we're not going to use this to manipulate people. We're using this to, this is what I can, you work with me, here's what we can get for you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you want to paint the opposite scenario, right? If they don't take action on what you're about to tell them, this is a possible scenario, right? So, for example, with your teaching, you can say, if you don't start, I get excited here. If you don't start curating your leads, you're going to end up with a bunch of phone calls, talking to a bunch of people who aren't going to buy. You're going to continue to be frustrated. You're going to continue to not make the money that you know you should be making. You're going to be working harder, so on and so forth, right? So I'm painting now the opposite. So we've got future pacing the positive, we've got future pacing the negative.
Mm-hmm.
The final piece to your opening is, now your audience should be really engaged at this point, because you pointed out, hey, this is for you. You've described them and their problems. Here's what you're going to discover, the thing that they want to discover. Here's what your life can be like if you follow this. Here's what your life could be like if you don't follow this, right? So now they're primed. Now, why should they listen to you? So this is where you're going to tell your origin story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, for those of you that are selling I'll just give you this one tip, because there's a lot with origin story, but if you're the type of person that's selling I did this,
Mm-hmm.
right? I accomplished this. So for example, when I'm selling my workshop on putting together a presentation, people come for a 3-day workshop, and when they leave, their presentation is done. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I guide them through it. So when I'm telling my story, like if I'm telling the $340,000 story,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to sell it, I've got to spend a lot more time on when I was bombing,
Mm-hmm.
when I was nervous to get on stage, right? So what most people do, and you've seen people do this, they show pictures of them next to their rented Ferrari, right? In their rented mansion that they rented for a day, and they borrowed money from their mom to rent the mansion, right? And they spend too much time and look at my life and how great my life is.
Mm-hmm.
No, you want to spend more time in the pain part of your story,
Mm-hmm.
the part of your story where things weren't going, because the people who are watching you, that's where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to meet people where they are in order to move them to where you want them to go. So spend more time in the, hey, here's the struggles that I was going through phase, and not so much, hey, look at me now, because they can't relate to you and your Ferrari and your private jet and all of that stuff, because they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that just comes across as bragging.
Mm-hmm.
So now your story, if you got testimonials, you want to just put them in here. Now we want to get to the content section, right? So all of that's the opening.
Mm.
All of that is in your opening. That's what it needs to accomplish. That's what it needs to accomplish. By the way, all of this is setting up the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I'm saying, everything I'm doing is setting up that sale, right? I'm future pacing what my product or service will do for them. That's the future pacing. And if you don't get my product or service, this is how shitty your life is going to be. Okay. Now you don't say it like that, but you're already setting up the sale.
Oh, I'm going to say
Now,
it.
yeah. Now I get to the content, and this is where almost everybody messes up, because they believe that if they deliver a lot of content, they're delivering more value. And it's the actual opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
When you deliver too much content, two bad things happen. The first bad thing that happens is your audience gets confused. So I work with a lot of people in cybersecurity who do presentations in front of executives, right? And they want to get into the technical nitty-gritty details because they love that stuff.
Right.
Audience is bored, they get confused, and a confused audience doesn't take action. They
Mm-hmm.
tune out.
Right.
The other problem is, another insidious problem is that when you overteach, you give your audience, your prospects who need your help, the false belief that they can get the result on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So if I overteach, person says, well, and they can, unless you're selling the simplest, most basic thing on the planet, and then you don't need a one-to-many sales presentation. when you overteach, you give people the false belief. So if I'm a financial advisor and I go into the nitty gritty details of picking the best retirement options and annuities and stuff like that, people say, I don't need this guy. It's not true. They do need you. It's a false belief. So here's the way around that. The magic number is 3, 3, 3, 3. You're going to teach 3 major things, 3 major pieces of information. And here's how you're going to teach them. You're going to tell people, everyone should be writing this down, what to do, not how to do it, or give useful but incomplete information. So telling people what to do, here's what you need to do, but is valuable information, because most people don't know what to do, let alone how to do it. They don't even have an idea where to start. But when you teach the what to information, it sets up the sale. Because the how to is them working with you or buying your product or service. So you create inside of them their own internal pressure. Because, okay, yeah, I understand. Here's why. And then you got to explain to them why they need to do this. Here's what to do, right? And why this is so important. Now in their mind, they're thinking, yes, I understand that. I understand that's what I need to do. How do I do it? I don't know how to do it. So you're creating that pressure. That pressure can only be relieved at the end if they buy your product or service, if they set up that consultation with you, if they buy your membership, whatever it is that you're selling, if they buy into your brand or religion, whatever, it doesn't make any difference. So 3 pieces of content: what to do, not how to do it, are useful but incomplete. So if I say to you, Rob, so I've been doing that right now, even though I'm not selling anything at the end here. So if you notice, I said, well, you got to develop your origin story. And I gave you a quick little piece of information. Someone goes back and listens to that. If I was selling a product on how to create your origin story, right? I could give you a whole bunch of information about what you need to do. Here's what your story should do. And at the end, you still don't know how to do it. And I say to you, well, listen, I'm having a 2-day workshop where at the end of that, we're going to work together on your origin story. And at the end of that workshop, when you leave, your origin story will be completely done. Did you see? That sets up the sale. So I gave you a little bit of info. By the way, I'm not selling an origin story workshop, but it's just used as an illustrative example.
I've talked about origin stories multiple times on this show, and I think origin stories are very powerful to let people get to know you, to trust you, to feel safe with you.
Yeah, 100%. And so again, we're setting up the sale, giving you useful but incomplete, right? The only way for you to complete it is to buy my product or service, set up a consultation, meet with me, whatever it is. Okay. So that's the teaching section. Okay. That's the content section, not the teaching section, the content section. Now we need to transition into the close. And again, this is where people really have a problem. And we've all seen it. They get up on stage and they freeze. They're going along, they're teaching their stuff. They like teaching, they like motivating. Now they know that they got to sell something. And so their entire energy changes. They tense up, they speed up, they slow down. It's almost as if a siren is going off. Hey, this person is going to try to sell me something now. And one of the ways to avoid that is to have a smooth transition into the close. So it is mission critical that you have that smooth transition. In fact, I had a guy pay for a day of my time. He was a really good speaker. He already had his presentation done. He came just to learn transitions. That's all we worked on, from transitioning, right? So you need to transition into the close. And again, there's more to it than this, but here's something you can take and use, and it'll be better than probably what you're using now. Is what you want to say is, so far you've discovered, and then you recap what you just told them. So far you discovered this, this, and this, but I want you to get this one thing. And then you make a statement, a powerful statement of what they must believe, what they must accept, what they must embrace. Because if they don't embrace this concept or this idea or this strategy, they're not going to buy.
Right.
So I want you to get this one. So I could say, for example, I want you to get this one thing. Having a signature one-to-many sales presentation that you can deliver in person or online is the single most important key for you attracting the right clients, doubling your sales, and making more money in a month than you now do all year. Right? So now that is a transition. Then the next thing is, well, now you might, then the piece after that you would say is, now the question you're probably asking is, okay, how do I actually do this? And now you're into your close. Do you see how smooth that is?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So far, by the way, those words are important. What you don't want to say is, okay, so to recap, because that indicates that the presentation's over. And for your point of view, it's really just starting because you haven't sold anything yet. So it's you've discovered so far means there's more to come. Again, every little word's important. So far you discovered this, this, and this, but I want you to get this one thing, the big thing that they need to understand, right? So the question you're probably asking, or you might be wondering, is how do I actually do it? How do I actually make it happen? And now you're into your close. So now that's the transition. There's more to it, but that's a good start. Now we're into our close. And now this is where we are going to describe whatever it is that we're selling. The key is to speak in terms of outcomes and transformations and not just the features.
Right.
So you do need to tell them what the features. So let's say you're selling an online course and it's got 6 video modules that are dripped out 1 module a week for 6 weeks. You do need to tell them that, but that's nothing, right? You tell them the delivery mechanism. So if you're selling a consultation, hey, we're going to do a 45-minute consultation via Zoom, right? But then you want to talk about the outcome, what the end result is. That's what people are interested in. People don't want to buy your course. They don't want to meet with you to get an estate plan, right? They don't want to have to hire you so that they live, so they have a financial retirement plan. No, they want the result of all of that, right? What is going to be the outcome of that? How am I going to be different? What is my transformation going to be? Right? And so that's what you describe. That's really what you focus on, not on the individual components of what you're offering or of what they're getting. And then you do a really strong call to action. And just a big tip on the call to action. With the call to action, you've got to be really, really clear. The late, great, legendary copywriter Gary Halbert gave this advice years ago, and you'll see how old this advice is. But he said, if you wanted to get somebody, if somebody's reading a sales letter on their couch and you want to get them to call you to order, you need to tell them to put the letter down, stand up, walk over to the phone, pick up the receiver, hold out their index finger, right? And dial, this is how old this advice is, but it's still dial these numbers. So you can improve your conversions simply by giving really explicit instructions about what you want somebody to do, telling them exactly. Because if there's any ambiguity, they're not going to take action because they're going to take the path of least resistance, right? So, but if they know exactly what they're going to do and then what's going to happen after they do it, man, everything is crystal clear. Yeah. And so now there's more pieces to it than that, but that is the ideal structure for a presentation that sells.
Yeah, and for everybody out there, please listen to Dave. Dave knows how to sell. I've gone into seminars where there's 1,000 people in the room and 2 people stood up at a presentation to ask to buy something. And I'm thinking, the speaker was awful. It was just by chance they even got 2 sales out of it. But if that's your dream of standing up and selling from the stage, Dave is the guy.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, thank you. So I hope that helps some folks. And again, whether you're doing webinars or whether you're doing in person, so I work with a lot of professional services. They're not selling a product.
Right.
They're getting on stage in front of a group or on a webinar to get people to raise their hand and get on their calendar for a consultation. So it doesn't matter. That structure that I just gave everybody works.
And because your personality, because of how you are, you do everything without slides, presentations. And I think it sells better.
Yeah, no, I'll still use some slides, but my slides are mostly graphic,
Right,
right? So
but
there's mostly
there, you're not
images on it.
you're not standing there
Oh
reading
God,
from it.
no, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's two pieces, and you can maybe have me back on if people like this. If they don't think it was magnificent, then you don't have me back on. But if they do think it was magnificent, and they want more, we could talk about the second piece, because the first piece that we talked about is how to construct the presentation.
Mhm.
The second piece, which you've alluded to actually a number of times here, and most people don't get that, it's very astute, is the delivery of the presentation. The how you present the presentation, how you deliver it, actually has probably more impact on the conversion than on the actual content of the slides.
Mhm.
And so again, at my workshops and things like that, we spend a lot of time on that, on how do you deliver the presentation online? What's the difference between delivering it online and delivering it in front of a group of, how do you get them engaged? How do you get them leaning in, like you talked about?
Mhm.
How do you take control of their actions and their thoughts and all of that? How is your stage presence? All of that. So yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the second piece of it. We can do that in part two.
So how do people find you? Where do they go?
Yeah, the best way is to go to davedee.com. That's very straightforward. Dave, DAVEDEE.com. And there is a video which is called Client Attraction Machine. It's really teaching you how to create in greater depth than we talked about here, a presentation that you can deliver as an automated webinar, that you can deliver as a live webinar, that you can do in person. And again, it's absolutely free. In fact, we don't even sell anything on that video. That'll get you on my daily D-mail list. Get it, Rob? D-mail? D-mail. All right, pretty tricky, this guy. Yeah, and so you'll get an email from me, which is quite entertaining on a daily basis. It has great tips and tricks and strategies and things like that. And then at some point, if you want to work with me on creating a presentation, we can do that.
But the one thing that really strikes me that you are is honest. You have integrity. Even though you're a
Oh,
magician,
thank
there's
you.
no tricks up your sleeve.
No tricks up my sleeve. No, no.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some tricks up my sleeve, but I teach them to the folks that are on my email list.
So if you like
Yeah,
this,
thank you so much, though, man.
if you like Dave, if you want to hear more from Dave, either tell me, we'll have him back on the show, or go to his website, davedee.com, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks.